When it comes to painting Battlemechs, there's one important thing you have to remember, and that's information is ammunition. Welcome everyone, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield, and in my hands right here is the very first Battletech miniature that I ever painted. Now, judging from my introduction, as well as the title and the thumbnail, well, you can figure out that, like many people my age, I got into the Battletech franchise because of the animated series that came out in the early 90s. And therefore, my first Battletech miniature that I painted was none other than my attempt at Major Adam Steiner's Awesome. Of course, well, it didn't go very well. His mech's not even gold, but you know, this was 28 years ago. I didn't know any better. Therefore, after all these years, I'm going to take everything I've learned painting hundreds of miniatures and fix that problem. Let's begin by applying a brown spray primer. I'm using one from Army Painter's War Paint series. And of course, I have my priming tool here to hold the miniature. You can find a link to purchase the STL files for this tool from my Etsy store in the description of the video. I'm going to start by covering the mech in Nuln oil from Games Workshop's Citadel line of paints. This is basically what they call a shade, or really it's just a wash. And the goal here is to darken the miniature up a little bit and add some contrast to the details between the armor plates. Now we're going to start with the camouflage patterns on the mech. I've got a screenshot here from episode 12 of the series over from Renegade HPG's upscaled version of the show, and we're going to go from there. For the brown color, I'm using Rhinox hide from Games Workshop's Citadel line of paints. Then, using an Artificer Layer extra small brush, I'm doing my best I can to trace out the outlines of the camouflage pattern from the screenshot from the show. For the base color of the tan section of the armor, I'm working with two colors from Army Painter's War Paint series. The majority of the color is going to be Desert Yellow, but I have a little bit of Brainmatter Beige mixed in just to lighten things up a tiny bit. Now it's time to work on the details between the tan armor panels. This is going to be a two-step process. I'm going to apply a little bit of the Desert Yellow Brainmatter Beige mixture just to kind of lighten things up a little bit from the original brown primer / wash combination. But then, once that is dried, I am going to go back in and apply a little bit more of the Seraphim Sepia wash just to darken it back up and get a little bit of that contrast back. Now, when you're applying this wash, you want to try to keep it within the details between the armor panels, but that's not really always possible. You're going to get some spillover. We'll fix that here in just a moment. It's time to tackle some of the edge highlighting. I'm starting with the brown armor panels, and I'm bringing in Leather Brown from Army Painter's War Paint series. Using a detail brush, I've got my Artificer Layer extra small brush. I'm working as carefully as possible to just add some paint around the edges of each of the armor panels, but still leaving the middle of the panel the darker Rhinox hide. One more edge highlighting step. This time I'm going to take a little bit of white, mix it in with a leather brown, and use that for the edge highlighting. However, what I'm doing here is kind of imagining that there's a light source sitting off the, I guess it would be the left shoulder of the Battlemech. Gotta think inverted there. Only the edges of the armor panels which face this left shoulder of the Battlemech are going to get this brighter edge highlighting. The tan armor panels need some edge highlighting as well. I'm basically taking the same set of steps that I used for the brown armor panels, but instead I am using Desert Yellow from Army Painter's War Paint series, mixed in with a little Brainmatter Beige from the same set of paints. If you found yourself being a little overambitious, we'll say, with the edge highlighting and kind of covered up too much of the color with edge highlighting for any given panel, feel free to go back and use the base color, whether that's Rhinox hide for the brown armor or Desert Yellow for the tan armor, and just repaint the middle of those panels a bit to restore a bit of contrast. The torso-mounted PPCs of Adam Steiner's Awesome have a red color to them. For this step, I am using Mephiston Red from Games Workshop's Citadel line of paints, and I'm just completely painting the barrels of these guns with this red color. Once that layer of paint has dried, it's time to apply a wash. Now, my Seraphim Sepia has kind of gone MIA somehow or whatnot, so I'm using Flesh Wash from Army Painter's War Paint series, but it's basically the same color. Once the wash in the guns is dried, we have one more detail step for the particle projection cannons. I'm taking some Evisceration, which is a brighter red color from CvltCraft's line of paints, mixing in some Brainmatter Beige to make it even brighter, and I'm just applying some highlights along the ridges of the barrels of the PPCs. There's one final layer, just for the guns though. Taking some black paint, I've got Abbadon Black from Games Workshop, Citadel line of paints, and carefully filling in each of the 4 gun barrels. I guess the left arm isn't really a gun barrel, but I'm painting it black anyway. I think it's an SRM launcher, well, in some variants of them, awesome. Anyway, long story short, just painting the barrels black. A few more details left for this particular mech. Next up is going to be the windshield. I'm working with a light blue color. I've got Simone from CvltCraft's line of paints, and very carefully I'm applying this along the cockpit glass for this particular Battlemech. To finish the details for the mech, I thought we'd save the hardest step for last, and that's logo time. Now the first Somerset Striker logo has 3 steps to it. The first is going to be kind of the red starbursty thing that they have in the outside and all little pointy bits, I guess. Sure, I don't know what else to call it. Any mid-tone red color like Mephiston Red or Evisceration will work for this step. Once this layer is dried, we're going to apply some Brainmatter Beige in the form of the white starburst-ish thing that kind of fills up most of the red but still leaves a bit of a red border around it. And the white color is going to be Brainmatter Beige from Army Painter's Warpaint series. Finally, the most challenging part is going to be painting the fist itself. Fortunately, this logo is so tiny, as long as it kind of looks like a fist, you're going to be alright. So very carefully, using a black paint, I've got Abbadon Black from Games Workshop's Citadel line of paints. I'm very carefully, and by carefully I mean I'm doing the best I can to paint something that kind of looks like the outline of a fist, right in the center of the white area. I don't know how close it really turned out, but honestly, it looks good enough, and you can kind of tell there's something there, and that's all that really matters. So for the base, I thought we'd just have some fun and engage enhanced imaging. We're going to start with a dark green color. I've got Caliban Green from Games Workshop, Citadel line of paints. And I'm going to paint the entire base as well as the sides of the hex base in this color. Then I'm taking a brighter green color like Moot Green from Games Workshop, Citadel line of paints. And I'm drawing a pair of intersecting grid lines across the base. And then I'm also making them wrap around the sides of the hex. Using these grid lines to divide the hex into 4 quadrants, I'm going to take some glue, apply them to one quadrant at a time, and then apply some flocking to that quadrant. I'm being careful here to not cover up the actual grid lines themselves. I want those to be visible. For the absolute last step in this painting process, I decided that the grid lines were not bright enough. I took some Brainmatter Beige, mixed it in the Moot Green, and went over the lines one more time to make them nice and bright. And by completing that step, we're completing the entire painting process of our Major Adam Steiner's awesome Battlemech. Well, that's about all I have for you guys today. My old little awesome here. I've got my gaming room set up such in a way that I've got a display case, or a display shelf for that matter, with some of my most favorite miniatures from the history of gaming in it. So my original awesome is going to go up there, and next to him is going to be the more lore accurate awesome from the first Somerset Strikers. So I want to thank you guys all for watching. Once again, I'm Jason, the creator of the Tabletop Battlefield. If you want to see me paint up the rest of the first Somerset Strikers, go ahead and leave a comment for that. I'll also take on that doofus Nikolai Malphus and his Thor, as well as Kristen Redmond and her Vulture, because I've actually painted up all those mechs before when I was a kid. I had the rest of them to go along with Major Adam Steiner here. I just don't know where some of them are, because those old Battletech pewter miniatures had a knack for falling apart, so, you know, some of them didn't quite survive the last, you know, almost 25-ish years or whatever it may be. So, alright, I'll see you guys next time.